Okay, good evening, everyone. Of course, I'm not going to officially start the meeting. I'll leave that to our chair, Gary Cushing. But I would like to do our swearing in of our new planning commissioners. So I think we can do this. We'll do this individually. We just have two, so we'll do one at a time. So first, I will call up Mr. Derek Farage. Okay, Derek, and I believe you raise your right hand. Okay, great, and just repeat after me. I'm just gonna let you know, this is the affirmation oath of allegiance for public employees. Okay. I, Derek Farage. Actually, you should be holding this. Okay, well, I'll do that. Okay, I'll just come on this side and you can stay right here with that right hand raised. Okay, there we go. That way we're both heard. Okay. Okay, we'll start from the beginning. I, Derek Farage.
I, Derek Farage.
Do solemnly swear or affirm.
Do solemnly swear or affirm.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
To the Constitution of the United States.
To the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental reservations or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully.
And that I will well and faithfully.
Discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're the Planning Commissioner. Okay, next we have our second new Planning Commissioner, Ms. Ashley Connolly. Okay. I, Ashley Connolly.
I, Ashley Connolly.
Do solemnly swear or affirm.
Do solemnly swear or affirm.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support or defend the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
To the Constitution of the United States.
To the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental
reservation
or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully.
And that I will well and faithfully.
Discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations, you're our new Planning Commissioner. Thank you.
Do they need to sign that?
Yes, they do.
Then, Madam Mayor, if they can take their seat, the chair will then begin to call the meeting to order. Not yet.
Yeah, what he meant is take a seat up here.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Just the blank ones, I'm assuming.
Yep. Okay, we'll now call the meeting to order. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Cameron, can you lead us? Thank you. Okay, next, roll call.
Chair Gary Cushing,
Here.
Commissioner Aaron Todd, Commissioner Cameron Carrizales,
Present.
Commissioner Ashley Connolly,
Present.
Commissioner Derek Farage. Here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so, let it be noted that we have one commissioner missing, Aaron Todd. Okay, we have the consent calendar.
Chair, on this item, because there are only 2 commissioners that were present from that meeting where the minutes are on the agenda, I'd suggest that that be continued to a future meeting where we have at least 3 of those commissioners.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll have election of the planning commission chair. Do I have any nominations?
I'd make a motion to elect Gary Cushing as chair.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, do we have any other nominations? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, election of planning commissioner vice chair. I'd like to nominate Cameron.
I'll second.
Second, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, recognition of outgoing planning commissioners with terms ending January 31st, 2025.
Just, sorry to interrupt, just for the record, did you have the votes on the vice chair, Jacob? Was it unanimous? Well, I just wanted to make sure because one of the microphones might have been turned off, and I just want to make sure you had the full vote.
Okay, now to the recognition of outgoing planning commissioners. Christina, if you're gonna do that?
Okay, thank you, Chair, and congratulations once again. So this evening, we are going to recognize 2 outgoing planning commissioners here for the city of Fillmore and thank them for their dedication and their service here to the city. And just wanted to say a couple of words about this in general, and that, all of you up here and all those who we're going to recognize and everyone who's come before are really dedicated public servants. And so just wanted to note that we know that the work that you do, the hours that you serve, and really all of the research, the planning, the being a part of the meetings and decision-making process, it may not go with lots of thanks and appreciation, but know that you really are doing quite the service for Fillmore and helping to make sure that our city is planned well and that we have good, solid development and that we're really a city that people want to come to. As I know, one of our newest planning commissioners is a recent arrival to Fillmore. So thank you for your work. I just wanted to say that to both of us. So the first person I will call up is Mr. Jamie Labor. Okay, I'd like to read here a recognition of valuable service by Jamie Labor to the City of Fillmore Planning Commission. Whereas Jamie Labor was sworn in as a planning commissioner in 2013 during a time of transition with many city council members, planning commissioners, and city staff new to their roles. And whereas Jamie provided steady leadership and dedication to the Planning Commission, serving as chairman for over 5 years. And whereas he mentored new commissioners and offered clear guidance on development projects. And whereas Jamie recognized and championed the unique cultural character of Fillmore, ensuring new developments reflected the city's charm, as seen in projects such as the Heritage Valley Specific Plan, the bridges, Citrus Grove on River Street and Central Avenue, many mansions on Santa Clara Street, the cell phone tower at 523 Santa Clara Street, Rotocraft, and the North Fillmore Specific Plan, and Red Engine Microbrewery. It's quite a lot of accomplishments. You saw some wonderful developments come through these years. You oversaw them and helped them come in. Whereas he emphasized key architectural features that define Fillmore, including large front porches, courtyards, balconies, diverse architectural styles, vibrant exterior colors, and discreetly placed garages. And whereas Jamie's dedication to preserving Fillmore's character will continue to inspire future planning commissioners to uphold these qualities rather than the generic design seen elsewhere in Southern California. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Cristina Villaseñor, Mayor of the City of Fillmore, and on behalf of the Fillmore City Council, do hereby commend Jamie Labor and ask all those present to congratulate Jamie and thank him for his many years of service to the City of Fillmore and to wish him well in all his future endeavors. Thank you, Jamie. And sorry, one more thing to read. I just wanted to read what it says here on this beautiful plaque. Jamie Labor, in grateful acknowledgement and deep appreciation of your leadership and dedication to the City of Fillmore and community. August 2013 to January 2025.
Jamie, do you want to say anything?
Yeah. I just want to thank all my fellow commissioners, city staff. It's been an absolute pleasure being on the Planning Commission. I've enjoyed my time. I just felt I just needed time for a break, and I think it's going to be great that you have some new ideas and some new energy on the Planning Commission. So I just want to wish you all well on the new projects that are coming forward, and I know you're going to do a great job. And the City of Fillmore is in good hands, so thank you.
And Jamie, I just want to say thank you very much, okay, personally. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, our next thank you and our appreciation will go to Miguel Magallanes. Have our recognition here for Miguel. Okay. Whereas Miguel Magallanes was sworn in as a planning commissioner for the City of Fillmore in 2020, where he served with dedication and commitment to the city's development and planning processes. And whereas Miguel played a vital role in overseeing and providing guidance on numerous key projects, including the cell tower at 563 Santa Clara Street, People's Self-Help Housing, the Housing Element, Williams Home Creekside, and 461 Central Avenue. And whereas his thoughtful approach and keen understanding of planning principles have contributed to responsible growth and development in Fillmore, ensuring that new projects align with the city's vision and needs. And whereas Miguel's efforts in updating zoning ordinance have helped modernize regulations to support sustainable and well-planned development. And whereas his service on the Planning Commission has strengthened the city's commitment to providing quality housing and commercial development and infrastructure that enhances the quality of life for Fillmore residents. And whereas Miguel's dedication to public service has left a long-lasting impact on the community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Cristina Villaseñor, Mayor of the City of Fillmore, and on behalf of the Fillmore City Council, do hereby commend Miguel Magallanes and ask all those present to congratulate Miguel and thank him for his years of service to the City of Fillmore and to wish him well in all of his future endeavors. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you so much. And I'll just read Miguel's plaque as well. In grateful acknowledgement and deep appreciation for your leadership and dedication to the City of Fillmore and community, January 2025. Thank you. Thank you. And if you'd like to say anything.
Chair and Madam Mayor, it's been a pleasure to be part of Fillmore's just development process and being on the Planning Commission. I know the city's in good hands with you guys. I'm excited to see the new ideas and the new projects that come through you and get developed. So I will be seeing from afar and might come back. I don't know. Just needed a break at the time as well. So thank you.
Well, again, Miguel, thank you very much. Okay, it was a pleasure having you on this commission with me for the last 2 years. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to oral communications, the opportunity for citizens make citizen presentations or comments not related to agenda items, but with the responsibility of which is within the responsibility of the Fillmore Planning Commission. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. The cards I have are for a specific agenda item, so I'm assuming nobody wants to make comments. Okay, thank you. Presentations, Michael, did you want to do this?
Thanks, Chair. I would request that we take the presentations item after the closed session item, and that we convene into closed session first and then do the presentations once we've reconvened.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to be going to closed session, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. The Planning Commission will conduct a closed session pursuant to Government Code Sections 54956-9D2 because there is a significant exposure to litigation in one case. Okay, so we'll go in closed session now. Okay, we're back in session. Michael, do you want to report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Here's the report out of the closed session. The Planning Commission met in closed session to discuss one case where there's significant exposure to litigation. The Planning Commission took no reportable action.
Okay, so we're going to go to presentations. Michael Brown Act presentation.
Yes, thank you. It might take me a minute to get the presentation set
Okay.
up, so bear with me while I do that. Thank you.
Was that outside?
Thank you, Chair. So since we have a couple new planning commissioners at this meeting, we wanted to take the opportunity to do a presentation on the Brown Act and some other planning commission legal issues. This is going to be a pretty brief presentation. I can provide the PowerPoint slides to you after the meeting so you can review those in more detail. I'm not going to try to go through everything on the slides word for word, but feel free to read that after the meeting. There are also lots of resources that are good published by the California League of Cities on, I think there's a planning commissioner's handbook that has a really good discussion of the Brown Act and some other of the legal issues that I'm going to talk about tonight. So what the Brown Act is California's open public meeting law. And the basic idea behind the Brown Act is that meetings of legislative bodies and advisory bodies of cities and public agencies are conducted in public and open. This includes meetings of the Planning Commission. The purpose is to facilitate and allow the public to participate and prevent secretive discussions by legislative bodies. So it's really about conducting business in open, allowing the public a chance to participate in the meeting. One of the key requirements of the Brown Act, which those of you that have been on the Planning Commission will be familiar with, is that by state law, an agenda is required to include all of the matters that are going to be transacted or discussed by the Planning Commission. So that's why it's really important that the Planning Commission discussion generally stick to items that are agendized, specifically listed on the agenda. No action may be taken by the Planning Commission if an item's not on the agenda, unless it's an emergency item. In the years I've been doing the Planning Commissions, that's not happened. There are a couple narrow exceptions that come up from time to time. So one of to not having a discussion about an item that's not on the agenda. So one of those is a brief response to statements or questions from members of the public, asking questions for clarification, providing reference to staff or other resources for factual information, requesting staff to report at a future meeting on any matter, or directing staff to place a matter on a future agenda. So the one of these that practically comes up the most often is that first bullet point, brief response to statements or questions from members of the public. Sometimes public speaker will have a question or raise an issue. The point of the public comments allow to the member of the public to express their viewpoint. It's not really about getting in a back and forth discussion with members of the public. The agenda must be published by state law at least 72 hours in advance for regular meetings. And so you'll notice for Planning Commission meetings that there's sort of a routine agenda type of schedule where the meeting comes out typically Friday the week before the meeting. That's in advance of the 72-hour deadline. For special meetings, there's a shorter time frame. So we don't have special meetings all that frequently. It happens from time to time. Those have a shorter agenda deadline, 24 hours. The agenda has to specify the time and place of the meeting and describe generally each item of business on the agenda that you have tonight. You kind of see a description of the topic of what the item to be discussed is. And usually that's followed by a staff report. There must be a public comment period for public to address the legislative body. So that was the public comment period we had earlier, where we had no one that spoke about items unrelated to items on the agenda. So this is important for you as planning commissioners to keep in mind. A meeting takes place if there's a quorum of the legislative body that's receiving, discussing, or deliberating on any item on which the legislative or the body may legally act. So in the planning commission context, where there's a body of 5, for there to be a quorum, there's 3 members of the planning commission. And there's no need for a commission to take action for a gathering to be a meeting. And so where this gets important is in the prohibition against serial meetings. That's not allowed for planning commissioners to develop a consensus or make a decision outside of the context of a public meeting, either through communicating or asking questions or discussions with city staff. That could possibly be members of the public, or it could be communicating directly with each other, have one person talking to person number 1, talking to person number 2, person number 2, talking to person number 3. So that would violate the Brown Act. Social gatherings, of course, are permitted if the business of the body is not discussed. The point before, it's underlined there, but avoiding collective concurrence is really kind of the key takeaway there and the thing to keep in the back of your mind. This I talked about a little bit earlier, the common types of serial meetings. Chain of direct communications between the decision makers themselves, emails being forwarded, or a series of communications between individual decision makers and a third party, such as a developer or city staff person, or like I mentioned before, it could be a member of the public. There are state remedies for violations of the Brown Act. I won't go into detail on that too much. So those are the basic Brown Act requirements, real sort of quick and dirty. Parliamentary procedures and just some sort of an overview of planning commission meeting procedures that apply to the city council as well and other public agency bodies. So the chair of the meeting runs the meeting and makes rulings, but a majority of the body can override the chair. The concept of due process applies to public bodies, and this due process concept is especially important when the planning commission's acting in a quasi-judicial role. So very briefly, there's 2 typical hats that you'll be wearing or 2 roles that you'll be acting in as a planning commissioner. There's a legislative type of role where the planning commission is taking an action that involves a general rule with universal application. In all the instances I can think of off the top of my head, when the planning commission's acting in a legislative function, it's going to be as a recommending body to the city council. So that would be recommending a general plan amendment, recommending a zoning code amendment. And so those are legislative types of enactments. Planning commission recommends the legislative enactment to the city council. The other type of role that planning commission will commonly play is a quasi-judicial role. And so this is deciding cases between individuals. Examples of this would include conditional use permit approval or denial, subdivision map issues, variances. And the city's code is sort of mixed in terms of when the planning commission's the final decision-making body versus a recommending body to the city council in this type of situations. So that quasi-judicial function is really when the due process requirements apply, where the planning commission's hearing evidence and then making a decision based on the evidence that's been presented in the meeting. So the general public hearing procedure is that there will be a staff presentation. The legislative body or the planning commission will ask factual questions to staff. The public hearing is open, receiving public testimony, which typically includes an applicant presentation, asking questions of the applicant, members of the public commenting on the particular project or particular public hearing item. It could be legislative or quasi-judicial. Once the public hearing's closed, asking additional questions of staff, and then the legislative body making a decision So these are sort of common mistakes that are made at hearings and issues to avoid. So one thing to keep in mind that's important is for the Planning Commission not to make a decision or express an opinion on how they're going to vote before the public hearing has been opened and before it's been closed. The idea is that the Planning Commission is receiving the evidence, considering all the evidence that's been presented in the staff report, in the staff presentation, applicant presentation, members of the public. And then once that public hearing is closed and the item is back at the dais for Planning Commission deliberation is when it's okay to express opinions more directly. Another major or common mistake is debating with speakers. The hearing's really for the purpose of taking testimony from members of the public. The chair's not to respond to each issue or try to get into a debate. You really want to avoid, but you're just receiving testimony from members of the public. Findings are very important for both legislative and quasi-judicial projects. The staff reports are going to identify the findings to be made. Usually we're not in Fillmore staff reports, we're not actually setting out copying and pasting the specific findings for the project, but there's always, or very often where the Planning Commission is being asked to make a decision, a resolution. And in that resolution is where the specific findings for the project are going to be. And so this typically the staff report's kind of the explanation of how the item background, what laws, what history might apply, the staff review analysis, and then the specific findings that are really kind of the legal meat of the Planning Commission decision are in the resolution. And so Planning Commission decisions are based on whether the required factual findings can be made. So you'll notice in resolutions, they're often tied to specific sections of the Fillmore Municipal Code, and that the municipal code will require the Planning Commission to make 4 or 5 different findings for each decision. So that'll be things like general plan consistency, zoning consistency, the project's not detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare. And we usually in the resolutions break each of those out and then have a specific analysis and set of findings for each finding that's required by the municipal code. This is kind of something that would be worth reviewing in more detail later, but in terms of contacts with developers, with citizens outside of public meetings, and this is particularly important in the context of quasi-judicial proceedings where the Planning Commission's making a decision on a particular application. It's about avoiding ex parte contacts. In quasi-judicial proceedings, meetings by a member of the body or the developer or residents can give the appearance of impropriety, since really the evidence gathering is supposed to be what's presented to the Planning Commission at the meeting. Site inspections are okay, but the visit should be disclosed prior to the hearing. As a best practice, avoid initiating contact with the developer or citizens. If you are contacted, be polite and avoid stating your viewpoint. At the hearing, prior to the staff presentation, state for the record any information which is relevant to the hearing, that you made a site visit, had a conversation with an applicant, et cetera. So like I said, that's particularly important in the quasi-judicial context. In legislative, where the decisions are more city enactment or broader applicability, that's not quite as important there. I had one more PowerPoint file that I was going to go through. And this was sort of connected legal issues, sort of related to the Brown Act for the Planning Commission to be as aware, again, in particular for the planning commissioners that are starting out. But this is just a quick overview of the California Public Records Act. It was a state law that requires essentially disclosure to the public of city documents to members of the public within a certain time frame. The purpose is to promote transparency and accountability in public business. the key provisions of the Public Records Act are that a record is presumed to be public unless it's exempted by a law. So there's specific exemptions that apply to public records, for example, personnel records, records dealing with employees. These are issues that as a planning commissioner, you'll not get into that frequently. And Public Records Act are primarily dealt with directly by city staff. Attorney-client privilege information is exempt from the Public Records Act. It's very broadly defined by state law. It's any writing related to public business by any state or local agency. There's a very short time frame for the city to provide a response. Again, this is something that's handled by city staff, but it's a 10-day time window to provide an initial response, and that can be extended for 14 days. The implications for the planning commissioner are to be mindful that communications and documents related to planning commission duties are subject to the California Public Records Act. So this includes emails, text messages, documents, or reports, regardless of device or account. And so that includes any communication sent or received during commission duties. So really anything, any type of email communication that you're having related to planning commission duty is a public record. And just as a best practice, I tend to think of those records, just sort of assume that it's going to be public and be mindful of that. The recommendation and key takeaway here, keep the Public Records Act in mind when you're serving as a planning commissioner, when you're wearing that hat. I think if you don't already, you'll have a city email set up. And so it's just as a best practice, use that city email for conducting planning commission business and not your personal email. It helps maintain a clear distinction between personal and official communications. And that's really what that city email is there for, to kind of allow you to conduct the business of being a planning commissioner while ensuring that the city's complying with the Public Records Act requirements. So in conclusion, Public Records Act is a law that ensures transparency and public trust, and the key takeaway is to make sure to use your city email for planning commission related activity, and be mindful of the Public Records Act, that it's there, that it's a requirement. So in your communications as a planning commissioner, just always keep that in mind. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Otherwise, that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Let's see, I'm not sure. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now we'll go to public hearings. 12A, continued public hearing, consideration of zoning ordinance amendment number 24-02 and ordinance number 24-976, allowing non-storefront medical cannabis retailers in the BP zone and medical cannabis delivery as required by state law, and finding of CEQA exemption. Brian, presentation.
Okay. Good evening, Chair and Planning Commission, City of Fillmore. I'm Brian McCarthy. I'm presenting this ordinance. I presented it to you previously on October 23rd at a special meeting, and the Planning Commission had some recommended changes to the ordinance, which brings us back here tonight. Just to try to summarize this a bit, the state of California adopted Senate Bill 1186. Senate Bill 1186 made it so cities cannot prohibit sales of medical marijuana or deliveries of medical marijuana. Our ordinance currently does prohibit that. So the ordinance would amend our municipal code to allow for that to occur. Section 6.04, 1203.16 and 7.40.010 and 7.40.040. In order to adopt this ordinance, we picked a zone in specifically the business park area of the city, as this area lends itself to delivery type operations. It's geared toward industrial type uses, things that might have trucks or periodic deliveries or storage. It's not for storefront. And so this fits in well with the business park. Storefront is mostly along this commercial highway. And like I said, this would operate as more of an industrial type warehousing use. Senate Bill 1186 requires us to select one district. And if we do not select one district, then it's allowed anywhere in the city. And the city can also adopt reasonable regulations. And such regulations include enclosed buildings, possibly warehouses, distribution facilities where medicinal cannabis products are stored or loaded for distribution to patients. They must be by delivery only. On-site customer sales are specifically prohibited. City-specific regulations for individual applications, including zoning requirements, security, public health and safety, and licensing requirements. An operations plan will be required under this ordinance, and conditions will be required as part of the conditional use permit to ensure safety and security. So we went through the municipal code and we added in the appropriate language, which allowed it in the business park. With this conditional use permit, we define specific terms that are used. We provide the design standards and we provide the operational standards. So when an applicant comes in to obtain a CUP, it should be pretty clear what to expect and what will be in their permit. So there are no hidden standards that will jump out at them. It's all baked in. It was the Senate Bill 1186 was signed by Governor Newsom in 2022, and it's effective as of this year. However, the City Council adopted an urgency ordinance to stay that Senate bill while we adopted the ordinance that you see tonight. And they adopted an extension to that and a subsequent extension. So the current stay on the state law is through December 11, 2025. So we're nice and early by bringing this through the process now. As I mentioned at the outset, the Planning Commission had a couple of changes they wanted to see in the ordinance, and those are outlined here. There were just two. One of those was a distance restriction of 600 feet from any public park, religious institution, daycare facility, school, or other medicinal cannabis retailer, hemp storage facility, or hemp manufacturing and testing facility. Staff crafted subsection B under 6.04.1655. I can read that if you like. No? Okay. And the second item was to add video surveillance, and that staff crafted what we felt met the commission's request under subsection 12D of 6.04.1655. And I'll save you from me reading that one as well.
Yeah.
Okay. This project is categorically exempt from CEQA, as there could be no consequence of a physical change to the environment. Staff's recommendation on this item is to open and conduct the public hearing and accept comments, close the public hearing, and lastly, adopt Planning Commission Resolution 251052, recommending City Council adopt zoning ordinance amendment 24-02 and ordinance number 25976, amending the Fillmore Municipal Code to allow non-storefront medicinal cannabis retailers in the BP zone and medicinal cannabis delivery as required by state law, and finding of exemption from CEQA. I'm happy to take any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Sure.
So is there any data that supports the negative secondary effects specifically for non-storefront, medical-only, delivery-only medical cannabis facilities on any other type of use?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Is there...
The language in here talks about how in the code, it talks about the purpose being to prevent secondary negative impact.
Right.
And I just was curious because, I mean, it's talking about just regular marijuana,
Yes.
Non-medical, but I'm saying, is there any data that supports that there's any impact on any other type of use that's negative?
It depends on what you're looking at, but let's say if there's like crime statistics, there is no data The sheriff looked at this. We sought his input as to whether there might be some sort of policing concerns. And the operations that exist currently in Ojai, Thousand Oaks, and I believe maybe in Oxnard, there is no data to suggest that crime is higher surrounding these types of facilities as compared to any other type of facility. But when it comes to land use planning and design and analysis, we look at projects for their compatibility with the surrounding environment. And oftentimes, if you have things like delivery type operations and storage happening in a residential zone, it generally creates inconsistencies with the neighbors, right? In terms of traffic and parking and people coming and going and noise in all hours of the night. And so that's why we look at what zones would be compatible with this type of a use. And I believe this type of use can occur 24 hours a day. It will be coming and going. It won't necessarily be a pretty operation, but it will be functional. And Business Park offers that kind of functionality in terms of access. It's right along the highway. It won't come in and conflict with school traffic. It won't conflict with daycare with kids crossing the street, things like that. And it's also consistent, the separation is consistent with how our city and most all other cities look at alcohol licenses, for example. And there's no data to, I mean, this medical marijuana may be like an inebriating type of a substance, but we don't have data to suggest that people are smoking marijuana and coming and driving here. But in terms of alcohol, that's restricted because they don't want the alcohol being consumed near schools and things like that. So it was kind of maybe from a more public perception standpoint that it should be treated that way as well. But again, there's no specific data like that.
Okay.
Yeah. That answer your question? Or?
Yeah, and I have another question, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the other areas listed that, Beverly Hills, Moore Park, and Murrieta, this radius, I'm sure they have specific zone areas as well that it's allowed. Was the size, scale of these places considered compared to the scale of Fillmore? Because I just want to know if the scale was considered because it may be prohibitive.
So say the overall scale of the city area or city per capita versus how many of these operations you could fit?
Yeah, like the land
that
area.
population?
Yeah.
There wasn't any kind of ratio statistics done. I don't know that data would be readily available in those types of cities. The business park, however, is pretty expansive. It measures about 3,200 feet across and 600 feet deep. So the restriction of separating between them of 600 feet would still allow for a couple on each block. So you could end up with a handful of these, possibly up to 6 maybe, just in the business park. And we think that would probably be more than sufficient to serve a small population like Fillmore, which is 17,000 people. And sometimes when you have land available for a high intensity use that other cities are restricting, they'll show up in the city that's overly allowing it, and then their travel distances are much greater because other cities aren't allowing it as well. So it's a balancing act of we want to allow it, but how do we make sure that it's consistent with the scale of the city? We felt the business park is on scale with the city service, and it offers opportunity, and it also has the access and the other compatibility issues that I had mentioned previously.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not an exact science, and the market will kind of dictate how things go. But it's subject to ordinance amendments if an applicant finds it's just completely restrictive, or if the city finds that we're getting too many of these things, we can go back and look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Derek, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just had a couple questions. One, I saw the ordinance it mentioned hemp sales and everything. I know Santa Paula has a hemp facility there off of back behind Halleck.
Okay.
are hemp deliveries outside of this? This is just purely medical marijuana?
Correct.
Ordinance?
Correct. This is purely medicinal marijuana.
Okay.
We do allow for hemp under a separate section of our land use. So there can be hemp storage and manufacturing and testing, which is also allowed in the business park zone. And so back to your question of compatibility, we already allow for the hemp there. And so the medicinal marijuana delivery would fit well with that.
Would the 600 feet distance be part of that? Or can you have one right next door to each other?
Indeed, the 600 feet is inclusive of the hemp storage. So they would also be subject to the separation. Yeah.
Okay. My second question, with the CEQA exemption for businesses, that does not include the building codes. They would still be required to potentially, if building a building, because there's not a lot of building space out in Business Park. So if they're building a new building or storage facility, that would potentially require CEQA depending on the size and scope of that project.
That's correct. A new development will come in and they'll submit an application for a conditional use permit. And if it's constructing a new building, it will also be a development permit. And we look at the construction and the operation also under CEQA to determine whether there are specific environmental impacts associated with the construction. We do have an environmental impact report that's been adopted and approved as part of the business park master plan. And so usually a project that comes in to develop in the master plan area, so long as it's consistent with the master plan, it's covered under the existing environmental document, and they'll adopt those mitigation measures. We look at and review every project to see if it's still consistent with that EIR. If new information comes to light that demonstrate the project has additional environmental consequences, we recirculate an environmental document.
And then my last question is just, have we had any applications for this type of business since the adoption or the signing of the SB 1186?
No, we've had no calls, no interest has come to light.
Thank you.
Okay. Cameron? Okay. All right, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Okay, so we have 2 speaker cards. Annette?
Hi, I'm Annette Sula. I've been a resident of Fillmore for over 40 years. We had a situation some years back where cartels tried to come in and do 10,000 square foot grows here in Fillmore. There was a turnout of the populace here that were so against it. We had overflow all the way out to almost to the street of people saying this is something they didn't want here. I don't understand. We're Fillmore, we're small. People can go to Santa Paula. People can go all places. I do not think that this is in the best interest of our community. We have a small population. We have a lot of children in this community. I just see this as, I understand medical marijuana, and I'm not saying I'm against medical marijuana, but I don't see how this is going to in any way make our city better, and it has a lot of potential to make our city a lot worse. So I would like you to really consider that, and I ask that you would make sure that you're letting the people of Fillmore know what this is all about and what's happening here and what's being suggested, because this is something that I know the people of Fillmore have spoken very strongly against. If you need medical marijuana, you can go 10 miles away and get it. So why would we bring this into Fillmore? It can only serve as a detriment. Thank you for letting me share.
Okay, second speaker, Diane Sutton.
Hello. I was wondering if I could get what you have there, by the way, to kind of look more in depth on the PowerPoint. That was one thing. I had questions, but I don't know if you can answer them. Public comment only. We've already recognized the state of California is very irresponsible with a lot of things they do. In Fillmore, every week there's accidents due to alcohol abuse and a lot of drug abuse, and I deal with it myself, and I understand your hands are tied. I get it. But my question is, if it's a prescription, I'm assuming because it's medical marijuana, why isn't it going through the pharmacy? Why can't why can't Rite Aid or CVS handle it, is my question. Why is it an isolated building? Very curious to see who's really involved here, who's backing the state decision. I don't understand why this is such a big deal. It's not to you, it's to the state of California, but I wanted to look at that a little bit more in depth. And if you can answer those two questions, if it's a prescription-only drug, and then why it can't go through pharmacies, you can maybe pass me a note or something, I don't know, whatever, but that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our comments. Commissioners, questions, comments?
I have some comments.
Okay.
So I'm new, obviously, but I watched the video from the last meeting where this was brought up, and I know that some language that was restrictive was proposed. I proposed to remove the restrictive language regarding the distance to the certain uses that are identified in the business park area. I don't really see how there's any overlap or impact or potential harm, especially since we don't have any data that, shows that there is any harm being done on those specific uses in that business park area. And especially since it's a non-storefront, non-retail, people are not coming to this facility to purchase things. It's mobile, so it's going to be throughout the city regardless. There's not really a boundary. There's a home base, but it's going to be mobile. Also, I feel like the area isn't that large, and there is a big park right there. So, when you're drawing that 600-foot radius, I think, will be too restrictive. As it is, there is no applicants. There really aren't buildings there. So if somebody wanted to have this type of facility, they would have to put a pretty large financial investment to build a building, which is already restrictive on its own. I think ultimately the language, restricts access to people who are in need of medical marijuana, people who may have cancer or Crohn's disease or other things like that that are maybe bound to their homes, and they can't travel beyond their homes. And I think this is really what that's designed for. And I don't want to restrict access to those people who need their medications. And if we're going to restrict access to marijuana like this, then I would say that we would need to similarly restrict access to a pharmacy that deals with opiates and other highly addictive, prescriptions that people also use. So, I think with the lack of support or, data provided, saying that there are any negative impacts on these other uses that are already there, and that there is a conditional use, we would review and be able to put more restrictions at that time. I think it's important to give the most access to people who need medical marijuana to have that in their city.
Okay, thank you. Cameron?
Question for staff. if we don't select, if I heard you right, we don't select a location, it's gonna be allowed anywhere throughout the city?
Correct.
And then just, I think from my opinions and my take on this is, I think the restriction's absolutely fair, and the radius is in a line, I think, with the vision and the people of Fillmore. I think if we have to do it and we're forced by the state of California to do something and to restrict it to this location and limit it from distances from places like a child daycare, I think it's also multiple deliveries of these facilities. I don't think our population justifies even having more than one. So I'm definitely in agreement with the staff recommendation.
Okay. Derek?
Yeah, I think the business park is a good compromise of where to put a housing facility for the deliveries. Again, this is just an ordinance to to comply with SB 1186. It's not saying that we're going to get these types of businesses in the city. It's just adhering to this law. I think I did have one follow-up question. With the restriction of the 600 feet, is there an opportunity for an applicant to potentially request an amendment to that 600 feet of coming closer in to another facility? That's...
Yeah, anybody can file for a zoning text amendment.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, I think the ordinance that as written, I think adheres to the requirement to the state law, and avoids the state coming in and dictating how we plan our city. So.
Okay, thank you. My comments really mimic Cameron's. I think if it was up to me, we wouldn't have anything to do with marijuana in the city. But our hands are tied. We got to do and pick a zoning and restrict it. And in reality, it'd be like Ash said, it'd be a huge investment for somebody to come and build a building in the business park just to do deliveries. Well, if it's not economically feasible for it, then that's a business decision on their part. I would support the resolution and the staff report. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Do I have a motion to accept the staff report recommendation? Oh, you got to close it. Okay. Close the public hearing first.
And so what the motion would be item number 3 on the on page 6 of the staff report for this item for the planning commissioner that was if the motion were to adopt the staff recommendation.
Yeah. Yeah. We're okay. Okay, so do I have a motion to accept the staff report recommendation?
I'll make a motion to adopt the planning resolution 24-1052, recommending that the city council adopt zoning ordinance amendment number 2401 and ordinance number 25976. amending the municipal code to allow storefront medicinal cannabis retailers in the BP zone and medical cannabis delivery as required by state law, and finding of exemption from CEQA.
Okay. All right, do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Opposed?
Oppose.
Okay, thank you. Passes 3-1 with one absence. Okay, so we'll go to the next. 12B, continue public hearing, consideration of modification number 4 to development permit 18-02, conditional use permit 1802, and lot merger 1802 for amendments to the architectural plans of recreational vehicle sales, service, storage facility, and retail development.
Thank you, Chair, Planning Commission, City of Fillmore. This item is also a continuation from the special meeting on October 23rd. So I believe this is the third time you'll be hearing this matter. The project is located along State Route 126, just opposite the manufacturing industrial zone and the El Dorado Mobile Home Park. General plan designation is commercial highway, as is the zoning designation. This zone is intended for professional office, retail, service, and tourist-oriented businesses and activities that are compatible and harmonious with joining neighborhoods. Various retail uses and RV sales are permitted use in the commercial highway zone. Development permit 1802 and CUP 1802 were approved based on the project maintaining an RV dealership, RV sales use with separate retail use. RV storage by itself is not a permitted use in the commercial highway zone. This entitlement has had quite a administrative history. It started, I think the application was made in 2017, 2018. It was approved by this planning commission in January of 2019. And since that time, the applicant has come back and made several modifications along with numerous time extensions. And we are here under modification 4. And plans were most recently submitted here in February. I think we got our last hard copy set February 11th. You guys all got copies. The originally approved project, it's important when you have a project that's been through a lot of administrative changes to go back and revisit, what is the project, and incrementally over time, where have we landed? And this is the originally approved project. You can see the various buildings distributed throughout the property. It's 11 acres. It included this description of those buildings. I won't read all of those, but there were a range of things considered, including vendor lease space, manager's office, RV storage buildings, 20 to 25 employees, including a vendor-operated restaurant space distributed throughout. Modification 1 removed the majority of those buildings, and we're down to 3 buildings. This is what it used to look like when it was originally approved by this commission. And this is what it would look like from the same angle today. What you see there is building B and building C. And this is looking from the westbound view. In the foreground there is building A, and then behind that are the various buildings, and you can see building B along the highway. This is what it would look like with the removal of building A. The approved project as it stands now includes RV sales, storage, and service. 2 buildings, building A and B. B is optional, A is required as part of the permit. It's a retail component. There are currently 365 spaces and 41 RV sales display spaces. Building C is the one you see out there today. It's been constructed. It was constructed under the previous modification, and they obtained a building permit in order to lock in the entitlement, which was due to expire. So by doing that, they extended their entitlement in order to do Mod 4. So through Mod 3, this is what you're looking at, A and C, and B being optional. That's the current permit that the applicant has today that he is doing construction under. The rear, approximately 3/4 of the project site, is the RV storage component, and then the front, roughly 1/4 of the project, is what's considered the retail commercial component, where those 3 buildings and the other parking stalls are situated. Under the proposed Mod 4, Building A goes away and Building B and C remain. And the total square footage of buildings under Mod 4 would come down from just north of 16,036 to 9,724 square feet of total buildings. Building B, which would be constructed, is reduced in size, and it's shown there again. Building A goes away. So we have to go back and look at what the original project looked like. It had over 30,000 square feet of total building space. Mod 1 reduced it to 16,000 square feet, and Mod 4 will reduce it to about 9,700 square feet, a reduction of 68% of total building space. So it's gone from buildings and asphalt to more asphalt than previously considered. Planning Commission direction in September 18 and October 23rd was it asked for more assurance for the retail uses as was considered in Building A or equivalent, and provide that on the plans. It was to increase landscaping to get closer to the 12% coverage standard. It's currently approved at 7.2% coverage. And to provide potential solutions for truck parking or food vendors along the project frontage. That was a new situation that we've observed. And also, as a technical matter, staff had requested that they update the parking tabulations to reconcile discrepancies. So the applicant resubmitted plans between the October hearing and up through today's hearing. Staff has been available every day to meet with them as needed. We don't have any missed calls or emails or anybody coming by to see us. We've been available and open to meet. We feel like they generally did a good job of addressing you guys' comments. We appreciate and empathize with them. This is a very complicated project. It's become very complicated. They're making their best effort, and they've done some good things. The Building A, the way they've addressed that really was what was presented to you on October 23rd, which was, we're going to build Building B. We will not build Building A, but the Building A location will remain open and available to potentially some future use to be defined. That is what they're proposing. It's not a flip-flop. City staff has reviewed the 2 plans between Building A and Building B, and all city staff determined that they are indeed different buildings. They're not looked at as a straight mirror or a flip-flop, or they're not considered exactly the same. It's considered different. So the project was no longer deemed consistent with the commercial highway zone, with the loss of the retail uses as a distinct use from RV sales. This is the Building B floor plan as proposed now. So under Mod 4, this is what would get built, is Building B. This is Building A as it's currently approved. So this is the building that would go away. So when we look at these 2 floor plans, again, the Design Review Committee, which is made up of all of the departments of the city manager's office, the city public works department, the engineering department, the finance department, nobody could substantiate that these are the same. Building A front elevation and Building B elevation. So we didn't feel like that met the Planning Commission's concerns about providing the retail. On the other 3 items, they've done a great job. In number 2, getting closer to the 12%, this was obtained because the wall at the rear was moved south or into the property, because during the permit review, the Ventura County Transportation Commission resides right north of this project site, and the grading and drainage and wall affected their property, and the applicant was required to do some construction work on their property, which is getting into the railroad ballast hillside. Through VCTC's review, geotechnical review, and engineering and structural analysis, they requested the wall move to the south. The wall moved to the south by 5 feet approximately, as I reported last time. It wasn't 6 inches to 2 feet. It was on the plan from the engineer. It shows originally it was 5.2 foot distance between the wall and the property line, which required grading into VCTC's property. The distance today is 11.2 feet. The good thing about that separation is that it gave them more space to do landscaping. So by putting the landscaping at the rear, they were able to pick up an additional 0.8% coverage. So we're now at 8% landscape coverage. So that is what was constructed today without Mod 4. So that's in the project site today. Even though it's coming as part of the entitlement, it was already constructed because they got into this situation where they started construction before having the mod. So we're going in reverse, which is not typical. So this will be a part of the project. The third major solution was to address the parking along the frontage, and they proposed no parking signs and a landscape strip. And this was a good design and a good proposal, and it seems acceptable, and that's shown here. So staff believes that is a good solution. And this would be in the city's dedication area. So the applicant will maintain the landscaping, but it doesn't count toward the % coverage because it's in the city's dedication area. But it does solve a problem. It prevents the soil from eroding in the front. It adds aesthetic appeal, and it also prevents the parking. And this is the cross section that which kind of shows you where the sign would be located, juxtaposed to the landscaping and the drainage. That's along the highway. So that was a good design, and that's acceptable to solve that solution. And I think that pretty much sums up the salient points. The project is exempt from CEQA. And staff's recommendation is to receive the staff report, open the public hearing, receive public testimony, and close the public hearing. Adopt resolution 241053, denying modification number 4 on the basis that the retail component has been removed. And to authorizing the planning director to approve those changes related to the wall that are acceptable and could be baked into the plans. Alternatively, the Planning Commission could consider providing staff additional comments and direction regarding modification 4. And I'll just close with, I have no missed calls, I have no unanswered emails, I have no visits from any applicant trying to find me, and that's also the case on October 23rd. I couldn't find record of unanswered emails or calls or visits. So we are open and available as we have been, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Brian, right now?
Is there, so the fence along the rear property line,
Yeah.
that's built as well?
The fence is not built, just the retaining wall portion.
What is the height of that fence? Is there a restriction on how tall it can be?
I believe it will be 6 feet.
And then same question for the front. How tall can that fence be?
The fence in the front will be a different style. It will be a wrought iron, more of a decorative look. And I want to say it's 36 inches, 30 inches, somewhere in that neighborhood. And also the shrubs will remain low, about 30 inches as well. And that's for visibility for cars turning in and out. And
Okay.
also you want to be able to see into the property. So the fence in the front is more of just a decorative. It's not a restricting access per se.
But what is the restriction on how tall that fence can be?
In the front, we don't typically allow a 6-foot-high fence in the front yards of projects, but we do allow like up to I think it's 30 inches maybe, 36 inches.
I know what it is for
recall?
residential. I don't know what it is for a commercial highway.
Yeah, we do not allow fencing in the front of projects that would restrict visibility or access. It's meant to have an aesthetic appeal.
Okay, but what
So-
if it adds to the aesthetic appeal? You wouldn't be able to have a taller than
taller
36-inch tall fence?
To go from like a 3 foot today to like a 6 foot tall wrought iron fence?
Yeah,
We could look at that, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that could be possibly a suggestion.
Another question I had is, have any like renderings or sections or any type of drawing been given to the city that shows the, you know, the RVs rendered as well, in addition to the landscape and the buildings? Because it seems like I feel like I need to see the scale and mass quantity of
Sure.
the RVs as like the main characteristic of the project.
The architect is here. They did do some renderings of building B and I believe C. And kind of in the background on the side, you can see some of the RVs, but just a small portion of them. And maybe the applicant will have that with them. But no, to your question, there is not a simulation that would show the expanse of the project.
Is that something that we can ask for?
Yes.
Okay. Like an image from across the street, for example, showing the entire or majority of the site with the RVs actually rendered in their, you know, spots?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Derek, do you have any? Okay, Cameron? Okay, all right, thank you, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, 3 speaker cards. Scott? Oh, did you want to go, the order I have them is Scott, Mark, and then Don. Is that,
I think Don will go first. I'm just gonna fire up our
okay.
PowerPoint here.
and then, you want to go second, Scott, or?
I'll go last. I'll let Mark go second.
Okay.
And then just as a procedural note, we formally open the public hearing.
So restricted. Yeah, we'll formally open the public hearing.
Before you begin, Don, did you want me to hand these out?
Please.
Okay. This is from the applicant, and I'm handing them out to you.
Want me to walk them down?
No, Michael, he's not restricted to 5 minutes, though, is he?
No, we've typically not restricted the applicant. Is the same as a public speaker on the project.
Yes, please.
Ready to go?
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Planning staff, Jacob, commissioners, city attorney. My name is Don Duncan, and I'm the owner of Highway 126 RV. Just to give you, some of you, we've talked before, some of you are new. I've been in the RV business for about 14 years. I developed an RV storage facility much like this one in Fillmore, and finished it in 2010 in Simi Valley. It was also a 12-acre facility, and we also serviced RVs on that facility, and we sold RVs on consignment only. And that was built 14 years ago, going on 15. I also owned a facility in Moore Park. I bought it. It was already a storage lot. And I had a 10-year conditional use permit there. I worked very hard with the city to develop that into what they wanted, which was high-density residential. But the fees that the city gave me at the end when I got my permit to build were so high, it was impossible to build the unit that I wanted, which were townhomes, okay? So I ended up selling it to a high-density affordable housing builder who's now working with the city. It'll take him another couple of years, and They'll get about 120 apartments there on that property. And I have a small RV storage lot at the corner of A Street and Goodenough that I've had for about 10 years. And one thing I'll tell you about RV storage, for those of you who don't know, is that every storage lot between Santa Barbara and San Diego is full all the time. So today I got a phone call, it was at my Fillmore lot, a young couple in Fillmore, they're picking up their RV at Simi RV on Saturday, and they're panicking because they can't find a place to store it. So before I knew she was from Fillmore, I told her I was full, which I am. And then I said, where do you live? And she said, Fillmore. And I said, well, I love to work with the people in Fillmore. Bring it out on Saturday. We'll find somewhere to put it on the lot. And when we have an open space, we'll put you in a space. We'll help you out. But that's the landscape of RV storage. It's really, really hard to find storage. So this project in Fillmore, I started in 2017. And it's 2025 now. It's been a long run. And one thing I can promise you is that I'm not going away. I have experienced COVID, which we all did. And right after COVID, the death of my partner, who was really the lead on the project. He was a financial lead. And that's why some of these extensions had to take place. I had no control of the property after he died for a year and a half. It had to go through probate, and it took me forever to get my hands back on the property so I could restart the project, which we did. A lot has changed between 2017 and 2025. If you would have asked me that I'd have a package delivered every day on my door from a company called Amazon that I ordered the day before, I wouldn't have believed you, okay? But that's what happens every day now on my doorsteps. And I'm not talking about my house, I'm talking about my business. It's just incredible how things have changed. Another thing that's changed, in 2017, we had 2 office showroom retail buildings that we put out there and 2 service buildings. Now that was because my friend that died had a lot of money and that's what he wanted. Not what we needed, it's what he wanted. We also had 3 covered like steel buildings where you could park RVs inside for approximately 30 regular 30-foot RVs. And then we had 5 for just big, gigantic ones that people buy for $500,000. But those small ones mostly go for ski boats that people buy now and spend a couple $100,000 with, and they want them indoor storage. But in 2018, when we put together our budget for that building, when my partner was still alive, to complete the whole project with all 7 buildings, the budget was $8.5 million. That's not including the land. Today's budget is with 2 buildings is $15.5 million. So would I love to have indoor storage on the property? I would. But when you build or develop a business, you have to have a chance at making a profit, or everything, you lose everything. And the only way to make this business profitable is the way that I'm doing it. And tonight, we're here seeking approval to move operations from one building to another. That picture that you're looking at now is a 3-bay service building that's already on the property. This is a site plan that was approved in 2022. And what you see in the center there is the building we just looked at. That's the 3-bay service building. And the other building, which we call Building A, is a sales. There's offices in there. I've got some big, gigantic roll-up doors so I can pull an RV in there. In the heat of the summer, people could go inside and look at an RV if they don't want to wander around the heat. And we're also going to sell RV parts. I don't know if anyone's ever been to a car dealership. Well, RV dealers are just like car dealerships, except for it's RVs instead of cars. You have a place where you go in and buy it, a place where you bring to have it serviced, and you may go there and buy some parts. Okay? So what's hard to see in this diagram is right next to building C is another building that looks like building A in shape and size, but it's optional. It's building B. So what was approved in 2022 was building A and building C, and building B was optional. What I'm asking to do tonight is to make building A optional, and building B I will do exactly to the T everything I was going to do in building A, which is I'm going to have offices in there. I've got big, gigantic 16-foot roll-up doors, and I'm going to sell RV parts. Same exact thing. You're wondering, why do I want to move a building 100 yards to the west? Well, this property, to me, I'm all in on this. This is, going to be the legacy for my kids. I'm going to be 70 years old next week, and I really shouldn't be working in my own mind, but I am. And the reason I am is to build this lot. And the reason that I want to switch the buildings is because I realize that there's a greater opportunity, and I want this property to see its full potential. So I plan in the future to put more retail in location A. Now, the reason for the modification is when I was thinking through all this, I didn't want the new retail to have to drive by building A, which is sales, to get to new retail, which is right next to my service building. It just didn't make sense to me. I thought I should move all the RV stuff down together, and then it gives me more opportunities to put different kinds of retail in that A location, because as you can see where the entrance is, you can drive right in and go right there and drive out. So we've kicked around lots of different things, okay? In Brian's staff report, he mentioned car wash. We've kicked around that. We think that that makes sense for Fillmore. We think we're talking about one that you drive in. It's like a prescription car wash. You drive through and drive out. We don't want something like a C-store where people are coming in late at night and maybe they've had, it's been a big night for them, and we don't want them thinking, oh boy, look at all those RVs. Maybe we ought to just sleep here. We want the right kind of retail there. And by relocating to location B with all the RV stuff being together, it just opens up more opportunity for us with more different kinds of retail. So it would look more like this. And that B building is 4,964 square feet. The service building is 4,700 square feet. We have 364 RV storage spaces. And you can read, we've got some landscaping on-site and off-site. I want to point out, Ashley, you talked about fencing. So the storage area has a fence around it because you don't want people, coming in to the storage lot at night. But the front is more like a car dealership. You're hiding the storage with everything up front with landscaping and buildings and trees and shorter fences and RVs for sale. It'll look more like a car dealership in the front. But in the storage, you want that, those are like going to be, I think those fences are they 6 or 8 feet? 6 feet, right. Now, I will tell you this. I've been in the RV business and storage business for 14 years. If somebody wants to get on a storage lot, they're going to get on it. I don't care. When I first built my first one, I had more cameras than you could ever imagine, and they're worthless. Because all you got to do is put on a hoodie and a pair of sunglasses, and you could be the attendant at the 7-Eleven, and I can be this close to you, and you can have a camera looking right at me, and I could take a gun out and point at you and say, give me your money, and they don't know who I am. Now imagine a camera on a storage lot trying to figure that out. This doesn't work. What you need is a camera that takes a license plate, see who comes and goes. That's about the best you can do. Okay. That's what Building B will look like, with big roll-up doors so you can pull RVs in. The two-story part is office. There's room in there in that building, in all the buildings that we designed originally, for everything we need to do. And I threw out Amazon for a reason, and that is that in 2017, Barber RV, who's now out of business in Ventura, Simi RV in Simi Valley, they had about 1,500 square feet dedicated to RV parts. They don't do that anymore because that's not how people shop anymore. You have to have inventory, but you don't have to have it displayed as much, right? So you have a smaller display, but you have a lot of inventory. So when people want, skylights and vent covers and RV rugs and all this stuff, you have it, and you have it for sale, but you only display the stuff that catches eyes and lets people know that you have parts. And you have displays and that sort of thing, but it's no longer a profit center for the RVs. They don't make money on those parts. It's just you're servicing your customer that has an RV. Okay, and that's what we'll do there. We do make money on solar, and we do a lot of solar installations, and we will be promoting solar like we always do in all of our storage lots. But that just gives you a feel for what happens, how people get stuff now. They either have it, they might come and look at it at my place and buy it from Amazon, or they might buy it from me. Okay. That's just the rendering of the building you looked at that's already built. Along with servicing them, we wash them because everybody that stores it wants it washed before they go out. Again, there's another picture in real life. Okay. This is Building A, and we're not going to go over the details. It looks a lot like Building B. There's A, there's B. So, like I told you in the beginning, my wealthy partner wanted 2 of those buildings. And he wanted 2 service buildings. We don't need that. When you go name any RV place around here, they have 1 service area and they have 1 office where they sell parts and sell RVs. And it's not any different than what we're going to have here. The only thing different is we're going to add retail in the future in Site A, and I don't know what it is yet, but I want to put something there because the property deserves it. There's been a lot of talk about, and there was talk about it tonight, okay? You have my business card with you, right? That business card I put that together in 2019, along with the sign on the property that said coming in 2019, because I thought I was. Both sign and business card say sales, service, and storage, and that's because that's what we intend to do there, as stated in my fictitious business name statement. Okay. There's that sign. I put it up again because I thought I was coming in after not coming earlier. I thought I was coming in 2023, and there's no sign there now because here we are trying to get it done. Like I mentioned, your approval to make Building A, not get rid of it, make it optional, and make Building B, the building where I conduct business, will allow me to do retail in location A. If you don't approve this and I build Building A, there will be no future retail because I'm not going to have people drive past and into the center of my RV operations to get their car washed or what have you. It just doesn't make sense. That's why I'm here. Now, you listened to a lot of history tonight because there's been a lot of history, but it's really it's not important. It really doesn't matter anymore. And I have to tell you, I handed out the staff report and made some comments. There's a lot of misinformation in that staff report, and I want you to understand there's a lot of misinformation. For example, it says I eliminated 4 commercial buildings. That is inaccurate. What did I eliminate? 3 steel storage buildings, nothing to do with commercial, and 1 service business building because I didn't need to. No commercial. So no, I have not reduced the commercial opportunity. It's exactly the same as it's always been. That's just one. I'm not going to drag you through that. You got it. I've marked it up. There's a lot of misinformation. In my opinion, that staff report should have never gone out. Not like that. The project is good for Fillmore, and I've spent 2 years trying to get Mod 4 approved so that I can add more retail to that project. It's cost me $500,000 to delay this project trying to get Mod 4. Had I have known it was going to take this long and cost $500,000, I would not be here fighting to move location A to B. I would not have done it, but I never saw this coming. And now I'm all in, okay? We've gone through this for the last 5 months. We've answered every question that the planning department has put forth. We've changed everything they've asked us to change, and I had no idea that tonight I would be coming here and the planning department would be recommending denial. I never learned it till I read the staff report. In all the cities I ever worked with, I never had a planning department recommend denial without calling me and telling me they were going to recommend denial and why. That wasn't done. I just found out when I read the report. And that was yesterday morning, okay? Not a lot of time to put a rebuttal together. You shouldn't deny this project based on opinions of what might happen in the future. That's not your job. Your job is to look at the facts and then make your decision. At Highway 126, we will store, we will sell, and we will service RVs. And I've been telling everyone that since the beginning. You have my business card? It says sales, service, storage. You've seen the signs on the property that were out there for years. Sales, service, storage. I'm building a $2 million office building with 16-foot roll-up doors so I can put an RV for sale in the building. Now, you wouldn't do that if you weren't going to sell RVs, okay? If I don't sell RVs on that lot, shut down my operation, please. Come shut me down. Say, you're out of business. We're shutting you down. You're not doing what you said you were going to do. Because my conditions of approval, which we've had in place, condition me to sell RVs. But I didn't need to be conditioned. That's what I wanted to do from the beginning, because on my other lots, I sell RVs, but only on consignment. And I mean, that's great, but it could be so much bigger because there's an opportunity to become a dealer and buy RVs and sell more of them, which is what I want to do. If you look at the original plan that was approved by the city, Building B was 3,800 square feet. And it's morphed. It has changed. It went up to 5,900 at one point, I think, and now it's at 4,900. It's a 900, what is that, 1,000 square feet bigger than the original plan. I'm asking you tonight to approve this project for all the right reasons. And I don't want you to continue this again. If you have questions, I'd like to answer them tonight, and I hope that you can make a decision tonight. And this is not a complicated project. It's a storage lot. It's asphalt. It's got 2 buildings on it. They built a gigantic industrial park in Simi Valley on Madera on 30 acres that started 3 years after this project, and it was built on 30 acres that was a swamp. Nobody thought they could build on it, and a company came in that knew how to build on swamps and built a huge industrial complex faster than I can build this. In Moore Park on High Street, they've redeveloped the whole street. That started 3 years after me. This is not complicated. To build a parking lot is not complicated. To build, a steel building's not complicated. The most complicated is my office building, and that's not complicated. It's just taken us a long time. And like I told you, cities are desperate for storage. If you know anybody in Fillmore that has an RV, and they're desperate. And look at how many have sprung up. Anybody that had a vacant lot anywhere with an extra acre on it is putting RVs on it in the city. But not just here, everywhere. It's a big problem for cities. And as you know, you have to address that. People, they don't want to drive to Lancaster to go pick up their boat to, go to Santa Barbara. That's not how people want to, they don't want to do that. It's too far. They want it within about 20 minutes. And with regards to landscaping, I hope that my partners in crime address that. But I just want to tell you, I know this business. I've been in it for a long time. And on the storage side, you don't want any landscaping. It's just not a good idea. You want it clean back there. Now, you want to put everywhere you can put landscaping up front, you want it, okay? Because that's what people see. But you don't want it in the back. When I first built my Simi Valley lot, I put all these gigantic triangular planters where, they put spaces on a chevron, and then all of a sudden you have a triangle, right? Well, I put trees in there and planted them all. They're all gone, and it's gravel. It just doesn't work. The leaves fall down, the sap lands on them. It's just not a good idea. And your previous city manager, Dave Rollins, I took him over to my lot in Simi Valley and walked around, and I said, look, Dave, this is why. And you get it when you see it. It sounds good when you're, visualizing trees. It sounds like they look pretty everywhere, and they do, but they don't make sense on storage lots. So we took every square inch we could find and planted it, all right? And we got approved by the city at 7.2%. And then by moving the wall forward and a few other things, we're at 8% now. And then there's a whole bunch more that we're doing that we're not getting credit for. So we've done the best we can. And I guess that pretty much sums up everything that I want to say, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, if now's the time.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Questions now, or we take the rest of the public hearing?
If there are questions for Mr. Duncan, you could ask them now. He said his associates are going to speak, so you could also hear the associate presentations and ask questions of the group once everybody's presented.
That might make more sense. Let them talk, and then if there's questions for me, I can come back.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark Pettit.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. My name is Mark Pettit. I'm an architect with Lauterbach and Associates Architects, and we're part of the original team from 2017 that's been working on the project. Don went over quite a few of the comments that I was going to make, but in particular with the buildings morph not only because of the uses, but because of how people use the space. So you'll see little variations where we have doors, where we have more windows, bigger windows, but the buildings are basically the same that were originally approved. Materials, colors, the basic design. I don't think there's any issues with that. There was a comment about restaurants in the staff report. We've never anticipated any restaurants. We did have a vendor space, and in that vendor space could be a sandwich shop, or could be some other type of food service of some sort, like vending machines or so on. It's something that would be added concierge type benefit to the people that are there, buying RVs. So once again, more of the concierge, as Don mentioned, come in with your RV, they'll park it for you. You've got all the different things that you want there that you can buy, kind of impulse items. When you come back, they'll have the RV washed and put it away for you. So it's that type of concierge type service, which is a little bit different than some of the other RV places that we've designed in the past. As mentioned, the building, it's the same building that was on A, moving at B. So it's closer to the people that are working in the repair area and the wash area. So there's a kind of a savings in personnel when you're closer together. And that's why keeping the future Pad A as a retail. It makes a lot of sense. Lots of parking spaces right at the entrance, easy in, easy out, visibility. We think it's a much better idea. I wanted to answer a couple questions. Our fencing is in the front 36 to 42. We have a little bit of topography, so it kind of jumps. It's sold in sections, and so it does vary. The RVs for sale are between Pad A and Pad B, and then the rest of it that's in the front are buildings or some vehicles, parking spaces for employees. And the vast majority of it is set in back of that with the 6 foot security fence that is around the entire RV storage area. And there's also access gates that we have in various places. None of that has changed. That is substantially exactly the way it was approved originally. So this design change, we feel, will make the project better. And not only better now, but better in the future, giving more opportunities for that other retail space, Pad A. So thank you very much.
Mark, I have one question. So the fence or wall, is it a wall between the buildings and the RV storage?
There is a slope, so there's a partial wall with a fence that's on top of that.
Okay, but you can see through it, you mean?
You can see through in back of the RVs that are for sale and the buildings that are up front. So yes, you can see it. It's back probably 150, 200 feet from the street, but it is able to be seen.
Okay.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. My name is Scott Yules. I'm with Delane Engineering, the project civil engineer on the project. Also worked on this from the beginning with Mark and Don Duncan. Just a couple of things that I wanted to touch on, some related to the site and some related to clarifications. We have a condition currently on our project. It's condition P13 that requires the sale of RV prior to, or the license for that prior to certificate of occupancy. So there's already a condition on the project that requires the project to do that, and there's a mechanism to make sure that that happens. So there, in terms of concern of whether or not there's going to be retail sales, we do already have that condition. And so with that, with the site plan that we have, the retail sales of the RVs, the sales of the parts, whatever that business is going to be conducted out of Building A as it's been approved today. The site, in terms of the development of the site, is just about ready for hardscape and paving. As part of our precise grading permit, we got a special condition number 1 that requires that we have either Building A or Building B permitted prior to paving. And so that's why Don is asking that the commission take action tonight. And part of it is we're a few weeks away from being ready to pave and then sitting there and waiting. We've also obtained our Caltrans permit to do the entry work, which we can't do because that's part of our site paving. And so timing is really critical for us to be able to move forward in one direction or the other. And so we're in a situation where we currently have a building that's going to be used for RV sales, RV part sales. We have 7.2% landscaping, and we could move forward with that project. Or we could move forward with the same project and take the operation. If you forget the buildings, we want to take the operation that we're doing in one location, even if this gets denied, and we would like to move that operation. And then we would like to increase our landscaping, and we would like to landscape the frontage of the project, which is approximately 10,000 square feet of additional landscaping, plus no parking signs to help alleviate a city problem with parking and with vendors parking and doing food service on the side of the road. And so with that, we feel that the project should be approved and that the fact that the site is ready for paving as we're sitting here in the winter months, and timing is critical, that we would like to request that there's a decision made on this tonight. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Oh, go ahead.
I have some questions. I wanted to know about the choice of asphalt for basically all of the paving. You know, I wanted to know, was there any other material discussed, like something permeable that, you know, because it's a huge impervious site basically at this point. And, you know, I wanted to know about, you know, is there any water reclamation taking place? I didn't see that in the
Sure.
drawings, but, you know, there's a lot of landscape. There's an opportunity there to be able to reclaim some water on site
Sure.
and reuse it.
Yeah, we were required and we have installed stormwater catchments and storm drain devices, as well as infiltration areas, so that the water that we do capture, there's a certain amount of that's infiltrated back into the soil on site. The rest is detained and then released, so that the amount of water that's discharged from the site, the idea behind it is that it roughly mimics the pre-developed condition.
Okay.
So while the site is mostly hardscape in its final form, regardless of the action that the commission takes, the stormwater has been captured, treated, some of that infiltrated, and then released back to the storm drain system.
And let's say Don does want to have a car wash there. Is there infrastructure actually available for that, to be able to have a car wash?
So the infrastructure for the stormwater is taken into account for the entire site. The actual water from the car wash, most of them are about 95% recycled water, if it were that. And it's a closed loop system. But depending on what the future development retail would be, that project would come back to Planning Commission to have those questions answered at that time.
I guess I'm asking how extensive of a change to the infrastructure would it be? Would he have to tear up
From a storm
quarter
drain,
of his
yeah,
paving, or?
Understood. From a storm drain standpoint and a water standpoint, none. Their services are already provided to both building pads. We've put in all of the underground infrastructure: water, sewer, storm drain, and we have services to location A, location B, and location C, where the existing storage service unit is. And then the site is currently on septic, and there is provisions that were made running a sewer line to the boundary of the property. So if the neighboring property develops and there's an opportunity to connect to the city's sewer, we would be able to do that.
Okay. And what about the question about the pavers or any type of permeable? I mean, I know you're saying you have pervious areas. Is that primarily in the landscaping and then the septic leach field, or where is that?
The area for the infiltration is in roughly the middle of the storage site.
Okay.
Permeable pavers are used often in parking spaces, not as much on heavily loaded areas, and not typically in this large of an area. When you have multiple acres of parking lots, it's usually asphalt or concrete.
And what about recycled material, recycled asphalt, or any type of carbon captured concrete specification?
I don't know about the carbon captured concrete. I know that the asphalt is just whatever the requirement was in our conditions. Sometimes I know there's like rubberized requirements. That's typically on streets. It wasn't for on-site.
Yeah, I'm just asking if there was any consideration made towards using any kind of recycled materials to lower the VOC
Sure.
impact. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Anything, Derek? No? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Okay, any questions for Brian?
And just for the written record, there's no public members that wish to speak on the project?
Okay. So we have questions for Brian. Derek?
Yeah. So in reading, listening to testimony and everything, it's my understanding that the original project had these 7 buildings, and the commercial highway zone doesn't necessarily or doesn't allow for storage. And because of the original project, we kind of made an exception for a consideration for the storage because of all the retail, the potential retail in Building A, the other servicing buildings, and other storage buildings on the front side of it. This modification that's up for us is, again, reducing now the retail space that was originally approved, thus kind of making the project more of a storage facility with RV sales kind of as a side. Is there any guarantee that, you know, Building A is going to get built? I mean, we have it as optional, but that.
Yeah, well, when it's called optional for purposes of determining the consistency or environmental impacts and so forth, you consider that it doesn't occur. If it's not in the entitlement, it's not permitted. So there really is, when you call it optional, you have to consider it doesn't get built. And what's the worst case scenario, right? I mean, everybody believes that Don, will make his best effort, but at the end of the day, you have to have a plan with a stamp on it that goes in the file because we might not be here tomorrow, right? So that it's always in this industry, everything has to be ironed out in a plan, in the conditions, and stamped and approved, stamped by the Planning Commission. If it's optional, it doesn't happen. And the reason Building B was optional originally is because it was accessory to RV sales. The building in and of itself was a showroom. It's listed on the architectural plan right here with a stamp on it. It says showroom. It doesn't say it's the RV sales dealership, it says showroom. The RV sales dealership could occur with or without Building B because there's still RV sales dealership. If they want a showroom, great. But the difference was between that and A was considered A on their approved plan. It doesn't say optional, it just says retail vendor. Okay, and that's what's on this is on the architect's plan. It literally says vendor operated restaurant space. Okay, so those are some of the things that the Planning Commission had been considering when it was originally approved. So this whole thing, as far as we understood from the beginning in 2019, and then when Mod 1 came along, was there would be some vendor in Building A. And that also goes to condition P13 that was mentioned. And the reason P13 is really able to define the RV sales dealership is because that was the owner-operated portion that was supplementing the RV storage. And then it was understood, as I wasn't here when it was originally approved, but Kevin and city manager and other folks were here, that Building A was a separate component. And you don't typically want to pin somebody down to the whole entire operation to maintain an occupant or a tenant in that building. For example, if you look at the Baldentown Plaza, you have vacancies. Tenants come and they go. And there's periods of time where someone's not up and operating. It doesn't mean that Vaughn's shuts down because there's one vacancy. Building A was meant to function in that capacity to allow the applicant the most flexibility because he was seeking tenants at the time, such as Marine West, and I think there may have been other ones that were being considered that weren't car washes. So that was the anticipated direction that this was going in, and it's so the most flexibility is there for building A with the incentive to have retail sales because of the capital that would have been involved in actually constructing the building. But the RV sales, as we understood, was to be fully owned and operated by the same applicant. Right, and so that's why condition P13 really pins that part of it down and allows him the most flexibility to move tenants in and out of building A. And that's the prime location, as he has said, it's the prime location for retail. And that is specifically why it's on the plan that way.
My only other question is, the applicant stated, one of the reasons for the mod is to not have people going through in order to get to the RV sales to, passing their vendors. But from the plans, it looks like there's two entrances. You have the entrance to building C and B, or is it the only entrance just over on the right of building A?
Yeah, the other entrance is just for emergency access.
Emergency access.
Yeah, and also I believe there's access that goes to the north to access properties to the north of this site. And just to clarify a few other things, we were open and operating under regular business hours during COVID, and we processed a lot of projects during COVID that, entitlements didn't slow down. The project has been complicated because of the changes. So if it were to have been built as it was approved in 2019, there would have been we wouldn't be here today, but we've acquiesced in every way we possibly could to allow the applicant to move forward on constructing the wall, even though it was moving and still had to be picked up in a modification, a to be submitted modification, which came 6 months or more later. The wall, in good faith, was allowed to get constructed with the building permit. And the grading was allowed to start without having this mod 4, this pending mod 4 that was only a discussion at the time that was going to come through. So once the construction then moved forward at a certain pace, the condition was added to the grading permit to ensure that, to incentivize the applicant to move forward with modification 4 and to continue to pursue those building permits. So it was meant as an incentive and not something that would slow him down.
Okay.
And I think that covers.
Okay, Cameron?
Yeah.
Do you have any?
What, do you recall the reasoning mod 1 was approved, allowing the removal of 4 buildings? Or do you, the thought process behind that?
Yeah, the 4 buildings in the back were predominantly, they were just storage buildings. Yeah, I don't see where the staff report calls those commercial buildings, but those were storage for more of the high-end recreational vehicles as we understood it. And so he requested to remove those, but was still committed to the retail on the front, which was, at that time, it was still building A and it was still RV sales. So those two things didn't change. Or what did change though was building B became optional, right? And again, that's why building B was just a showroom. So that the city wasn't dictating, if you have an RV sales dealership, you must therefore have a showroom. It was just, you must have RV sales, and if you want a showroom, you're approved for that.
I think just the reference to commercial was noted on page 4 of the staff report under entitlement approval timeline. Removing 4 commercial use buildings from plan. I think that's where the applicant was referencing.
This staff report's been through a lot of edits through a lot of people, and sometimes words get in there, and I don't catch them.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a Frankenstein sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
When mod 1 was approved, I believe looking at the timeline, mod 2, 3 were just timeline extensions, is that correct?
Those are modifications on
And then
timing.
so mod 4, so we have 1 modification, removing 4 buildings, 2 time extensions, mod 2 and 3. And then mod 4 applicants come forward now to modify the building layouts and location.
Correct. There was another time extension that was the planning director granted. And then I think that was the first one, and that was during COVID. And then I believe there were 2 more after that, which became official mods. And the last one that could be allowed under the code, under the law, was granted by the city council, and that was basically the last one. And that's why the city staff acquiesced to allow building C to go forward to lock things in, even though they had this pending mod that was, again, just being talked about.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And when Mod 1 was presented to staff, was there any discussion about flipping these building locations, making B optional and A? Or is
You
this
mean the other way around?
Yeah.
No,
This is the first time it's ever come up in.
yeah, it was understood that
discussions.
A was, as planned, was going to be a future retail tenant. And again, the same plan under Mod 1 includes that language right there under the project description. And then that disappeared under Mod 4. It wasn't explicitly discussed or written, but it just disappeared from the plan. So that means it was removed.
And then in Mod 4, there's a reduction. So the applicant mentioned earlier that the original size of these buildings were 2,900 roughly square feet. And they increased over time and then decreased. Now we're decreasing back.
Yeah, like I said, it's in and of itself, the original project is not a complicated project. It's asphalt and a couple buildings, right? That's not complicated. What's complicated is the administrative undertakings that have come after that, where it's changing this and changing that, and that's where it's gotten a little bit tied up in a pretzel because construction's moved forward without entitlements being in effect.
Correct.
So let me go back to the original list of buildings. This is all of them here. So yeah, some of the sizes have changed. You had an A1 and an A2. So you had 2 of them, which were 7,800 square feet. And A1 and A2 are roughly the old positions of A and B. So if you look at those combined, A and B, or you would have had 5,700 square foot of B, and then A was, I presume, 3,800.
Okay. I have actually a question for the applicant. Is that okay to ask?
It would be, the chair would need to reopen the public hearing to direct that question to the applicant.
Okay, so you're done with Brian?
For now, yes.
Okay, we'll reopen the public hearing. So who's your question to, Don?
Don, yes. Yes, Don, same question I had for Brian. Why was this modification for not, 2009, I know that's 6 years ago, feels like forever. Why was this not brought up?
You're talking about the building swap?
Yeah, modification.
The building swap?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So the building A and B, okay, building A, contrary to what you just said, was never going to be a vendor's building. It had roll-up doors. You can look at the plans, just like building B.
Yes.
We had 2 buildings doing the same exact thing. Okay. I came in and I said, this project, after and the reason for those extensions was I couldn't do anything. I didn't own the property anymore. It was tied up because my partner died. So that's why they gave me extensions. I couldn't do anything. I came to the city manager and said, I can't do anything. I don't own the property anymore. My partner's dead.
Yes.
So when I came back, I said, he's dead. We don't need all these buildings. Okay? I need one service building and one sales building where we're going to do sales, retail, and have offices. And we put building A and building C as the 2 buildings we were going to build and made building B optional. It sounded fine. I mean, they were identical buildings. They both did the same thing. I was okay with it. It wasn't until I started thinking about this and wait a second. If we moved it over, then we can add more retail. But if we don't move it over, we can't, because you're not gonna have somebody come on the lot and drive past, drive basically into the middle of your business to do a different business. So I said, so that's why we started. That's why I say, if I would have known it's taking this long, it's cost me $500,000. I would have never done it. But it's the right thing for the project, because now we can add more retail. If we don't, we'll never add more retail because it doesn't make sense. I mean, I just asked you to close your eyes and picture another RV dealership, okay? This is what this is. The only difference is, unlike all other RV dealerships, this property is huge, okay? They're normally, this big, and it allowed us to have storage in the back. In fact, it was Kevin McSweeney that called me when he knew I wanted to build something like this and said, go look at this piece of property. I went down, I looked at it, I said, can I do all this there? He said, yes. I contacted the owners of the property. They weren't even, one piece was about 3 acres. It was for sale by Chevron. It had issues, has contaminated water underneath. There's wells that have to be monitors. And then a farmer owned the other piece, and it wasn't for sale. I talked him into selling it to me because I knew the city, I wanted the project, and I knew it'd be good for the city. But it was just on a whim. I realized that, wait a second, if I want to add more retail, I got to put these buildings together and put it down there. And that's the premier spot, It doesn't matter where I put the sales building on the lot, but it does matter if we want to add retail. That's like the, if you're somebody else, that wants to come in there, or myself even, just picture a car wash. I mean, it's easy to picture. Come in, you drive through, and you go out, and you don't impact the operations at all. And that's how it came about. But those two buildings were identical. We weren't renting them out to anybody. When Mike, my partner, was alive, like I told you, he just thought big, okay? And he didn't have any experience. He just had a lot of money. I was the guy with the experience. But, if he said he wanted 2 buildings, okay, we can have 2 buildings. But we didn't need it. Nobody else has it.
All right.
Camping World doesn't have it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing again. Okay, any discussion? Go ahead.
So I guess what I'm understanding and what I've heard tonight as well is, Don is saying that if we don't approve modification 4, we're somehow going to lose out on the retail that's required. And I don't really understand that. So to me, in this area that, the site is in, it's an important spot. It's right at the beginning of the city. And I think it really has a great opportunity to define or further define the character of the city. And I think it should be taken into consideration that, this is the first thing that you're seeing. And right now, I feel like this is basically a parking lot. And that's what we've said. It's a parking lot with a couple of buildings. And the original, the original proposed project, it was 7 buildings. So we could actually talk about, the historical appearance and things that are listed in the Fillmore general plan. But now we can't even really talk about that too much because it's mostly a parking lot. And to me, it's also the majority of the land is being used for a non-allowed use, which is storage. I could see that more of the property become, retail, or more of the property become sales of RVs, but right now it's mostly a parking lot. And I would want to see a clear rendering of what this looks like from the street, because I know there's a 6-foot tall fence, but are we just seeing a black asphalt parking lot with a bunch of RVs parked in it? Or is this going to be something beautiful and something that we would be proud to represent as the beginning of our city? And on that, I would also I want to talk about the landscaping. In my opinion, I don't think this project ever should have been approved with less than 12%. I think it should honestly have more than that. I also want to talk about the scale and the plant materials. I think that needs to be investigated, more. I'm not convinced that the landscaping is scaled correctly. And let's see, I also think that some of the planting materials, they're like the vines, for example, on the trellis, they're not evergreen plant varieties, so a lot of the year it's gonna not have flowers or be a lush, verdant looking landscape, which I think is important because I think this should be, beautiful. In terms of the architecture that is left, there is, this thing in the general plan that says that the businesses should employ a traditional style and historic appearance of the city's older architecture. I see that, the first drawings in the set there beyond the site plan is the trash enclosures. I don't really see any aesthetic resemblance of the trash enclosures to the rest of the buildings. And I also don't feel like they're, of that historical nature at this point. Similarly, that CMU wall in the front where the trellises are, I would consider using like brick or some other Gabion wall or something like that that, again, would go in line with this historic appearance that is trying to be achieved. I just think this has an opportunity to make a monumental gesture at the beginning of the city. I really think that it needs to do that, and I'm just feeling like some of these elements, like the trellises even, they're sort of tacked on in the corner, and they're not really integrated with the landscaping, and the landscaping itself should be more. Another thing I'm thinking about is, this is a huge parking lot. So I think there needs to be some consideration about that it's all asphalt, it's black, it's gonna increase the temperature in the local air, locally to this space. There are no shade structures over the RVs, and I think it would be a missed opportunity to not include some shade structures, maybe with green roofs, maybe with solar panels. I think there's just a lot more opportunities that could be explored here. So, yeah, and I think it needs to really make a big impact at the beginning of this town and not primarily be showing the RVs in the storage area. So I would like to see some more drawings of what that looks like, because that's the primary character at this point of the project.
Cameron? Oh, do you have, or Derek? Oh. Hey, Derek.
I'll echo that first impression statement. Coming into the city, it kind of has that feel with removing all these buildings from the original project. And to me, I think concessions were made in the original project for allowing for storage in the commercial highway zone, and the reduction of the landscaping as well. So multiple concessions were made, even in mod number 1 when it happened. So I believe the city's been fair in its concessions that we've been given to the applicant. It's kind of just my comments.
Cameron?
I would echo my fellow commissioners on both sides that it is, I think I had the same thing last meeting. I personally don't think this project should have ever been approved the way it is currently. I don't think modifications should have ever been approved by previous planning commissions. However, that doesn't change the fact of where we're at today. It's been approved. There's been time extensions that have been granted. It doesn't change the fact that where we're at today, still. The applicant has presented mod 4, swapping the two buildings. I wonder if that modification was blended with modification 1, if there would have been no problems and we could have probably approved it then and construction would have continued. Maybe, I don't know. Can't go backwards. But I do struggle that if approving mod 4 the way it is, we do have a big parking lot, but that doesn't change even if I deny mod 4, right? If we deny mod 4, we still have 2 buildings. And the applicant was very clear, he has no intentions to build any further retail if that is. And it could be an empty threat, or to persuade the commission, or it could be facts. We don't know. Only time could tell on that. By making a swap of the buildings, what does it really do to the project in its current state as approved? We're flipping 2 buildings. The interior layout is modified. It is changed. I would not agree that it's an equal. I would not agree that it's identical. The buildings are not identical in layouts. Maybe from a function standpoint, yes. Maybe times have changed in 5 years, that retail has adapted and you don't need the full space to have floor retail, and you can have a smaller space in the back but still offer the same services. That I believe could all be true. I struggle with this project because it is the entry to Fillmore. It is a big parking lot. It's definitely not appealing. I try to think of it if we're in any other city, if this is Santa Barbara, if this is Valencia, would this get approved on their entry into their project, into their city? And I would say my gut would be absolutely not the way it is in its current state. But I struggle with the fact that we have previous modifications already approved to this point, and I know we can't go back and change those now. The applicant has every right to continue building the way his approved plans are. His modification today is to swap a building. At this point in this junction, how big of an impact is that? And I don't know. I struggle with that. I don't. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, all right, thank you. The one thing I wish we had was that Building A was identified as a commercial building, that there was going to be a vendor there, because I'd feel real happy that we had something in there. There's going to be retail sales. But I agree with Cameron, swapping the 2 buildings, if we don't approve mod 4, the building B is not going to be built anyway. And like I said, I don't know if that's just Don saying, hey, I'm not going to build it because you guys did that. But I agree, it is something that maybe I wouldn't have approved at first, but it was approved. In the current design it is. So I just can't see us denying mod 4. So, okay, any other discussion, commissioners?
Can we ask questions again to Brian?
Yeah, if there are further questions you need to ask from
I have
staff.
another question for Brian. So, because the plan originally that was approved for, I think, Building A, the one on the corner, distinctly said on the plan, it said vendor/retail, and then the other space next to it was sales, I believe, and then the middle portion was the showroom. He's gonna be held to having a vendor retail if Mod 4 is denied and he decides to move forward with Mod 1?
Yeah, building A would still need to be some vendor-operated retail, as is our
Right.
interpretation of the plan.
You were trying to pull up the plans, I think, there. Take it.
So this is building A, vendor office, and then you have retail there on the right. And on that approved plan set, it includes this as the project description.
So when it says vendor office, is there like an occupancy count or some type of like delineation? Because those are really different.
I believe it was processed the way it came in order to meet consistency with the commercial highway zone. So this is the way it was sold, that there would be vendor-operated retail space, whatever that means. And it just seems like the applicant has not been able to identify who that is. And so it's morphing into, well, the RV sales will go there.
Okay,
That's what
even though it says vendor.
Yeah, even though it says vendor. I don't know that we have a specific
It's a
definition
shell.
of vendor.
It's a
Yeah.
building shell, right? He's gonna build a shell, and he's gonna attempt to sell it to somebody, not lease it to somebody when someone sees it's an opportunity, right? That's his intention.
Okay, but what I'm asking is like, he will be required to have a vendor if he moves forward with what is approved right now. Whereas if Mod 4 gets approved, he's not going to be required to have a vendor and he could just have his showroom only.
Yeah, if Mod 4 gets approved, you'll have RV sales with the accessory showroom only.
So to me.
And I believe they're selling RV accessories.
Okay.
No, not. Even if something's stuff. No, it's the chairs.
And I guess, yeah, that's the question is, if the RV sales is also selling some of those things they're talking about that go on RVs.
But that's really, I mean, they're just different. Like a vendor is another party coming to lease and having their own business and
That's right.
they could sell something completely different.
Right, it doesn't necessarily be RV related.
Right. So, and then retail on this plan as well, that also could be a leased space, right?
Right, I think it was meant to offer flexibility for the forthcoming tenant that he was seeking.
Whatever kind of retail, right?
Whatever that was.
So he could, if we approve this, he could never build any retail, any vendor space. But if we don't and he moves forward with one, he is required to.
Yeah, if he moves forward, if Mod 4 goes forward, if what they call the location of building A were to get built with something, you'd be looking at modification 5 to see what that is. We don't know if this site plan would accommodate whatever use that would be in the future. A car wash is not gonna look like that pad where location A is. It would look like something completely different. And we would have to completely evaluate that use in terms of traffic. It would have a different traffic generation, and it would have, like you mentioned, water use and other things. So it would require its own analysis, and it would be Mod 5.
Okay. And on this plan for the showroom building that we're looking at, he has a small area that says lobby, and then underneath it says sales and display of RV accessories and equipment. Is there a minimum square footage for something that's marked as sales and display? Because it seems like this is not big enough to have any form of display, it's 12 feet wide with 5 doors coming off of it.
Yeah, there's no specific standard for that.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Brian? No? So what we need to do is put on the table the recommendation from staff. if we want to go with that, we'd have to have a first and a second, and then we'd have a vote on it. So if someone wants to make a motion to accept the staff report, we would need that.
I have a question for Michael.
Sure.
What if we don't have a majority?
So because it's a planning commission that's divisible by two, there's a possibility of a tie vote, which you don't have with a 5-person planning commission. So a planning commission motion still needs 3 votes to pass. So that means if a motion does not get 3 votes to pass, it doesn't pass.
So if it goes on the table that we have for the staff report to deny it, and it goes 2-2.
So if that vote were 2-2, then the staff recommendation, that resolution would not be adopted by the planning commission because the motion would fail. Alternatively, if there were direction to staff if the planning commission was supportive of what the applicant's proposing, in that case, my strong recommendation would be to direct staff to prepare revised conditions of approval, bring back a resolution with approval or reflecting planning commission approval. And so if that were the motion, that would also require 3 votes to pass. So that would mean if that were a 2-2 vote, then that motion fails as well. So the mod number 4 fails in that scenario.
So if we come up and say we want to approve mod 4, it's the same thing, 2-2, right?
Yeah, that's what, again, my recommendation on if the planning commission wanted to take the approval route would be to have staff bring back conditions of approval and a resolution reflecting that so that the conditions can reflect what's actually been approved.
And the reason for that is because the conditions tonight do not reflect that. The conditions tonight reflect denial, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And
There's
so
a denial resolution. There's no.
So if you don't mind, it's a little complicated listening to your direction. If I can simplify that to layman's terms, I'd like to try to do that. We have a resolution and a recommendation from city staff tonight for denial. Everything's prepared for that. If the planning commissioners decide to approve it, we'll need to continue it so we can change the language of the documents to reflect approval. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so then if there's a vote of 2-2, it's a tie vote, the motion for denial fails and approval, and the modification number 3 can continue as it is.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Effectively,
Good.
modification.
So hold on, because the more you talk, the more confusing it gets. Sorry, I don't mean that, but like that. If it's a 2-2 vote, and we go to modification number 3, the applicant has the ability to seek an appeal and go to the city council. Is that correct?
That's correct, because the 2-2 vote is effectively a denial of modification number 4.
Okay, okay.
There's no decision, there's no planning commission staff recommendation denying the project. There's no approval of the project, so that effectively ends the item and the applicant can appeal. Another option would be to, which I have not heard this discussed, would be to continue the item again till so there's the 5th vote on the planning commission.
Right, I think I'm understanding it. And then listening to the commissioners and trying to satisfy the commissioners and also trying to satisfy the applicant, that's the worst, trying to solve both, right? But I'm trying to be a problem solver here. The concern on the commissions, from what I'm hearing, is the applicant even said it, this is an asphalt parking lot for storage. That's what this is. That's the reason why the city staff could not recommend approval, because that violates the zoning ordinance. We couldn't even recommend to approve it. And it's no surprise to the applicant. We said that to him in September and October. We said it for 2 years. It's not a surprise. But we're trying to overcome retail. We're trying to solve it. On your part, as a commission, what I heard is to address the asphalt parking lot and also address the impression that's given and create an entry feature in the town. You would like to see an exhibit that shows that, and you want to see a grand entrance type of theme, and that would remove the appearance of an asphalt parking lot. Now, just to let you know, as a commissioners, the applicant knew that ahead of time, and that's why he has towers and some trellis work, and that was his attempt. So you're trying to make it look, so you're trying to not make it look like an asphalt parking lot. Okay, I understand. And the applicant is just saying, hey, I also recognize it's an asphalt parking lot. Allow me some flexibility. Maybe in the future I'll have retail. That's what he's really saying. He's an opportunist like anyone else, and he will allow that in the future. But just to let you know, as city staff, yes, indeed, we allowed a wall to be constructed. We allowed building C to be constructed. We allowed grading to be constructed. We allowed modification number 1. We gave him time extensions. We were right there with him the whole way, approving along the way. So that's the background to where we are. I wanted to let you all know that. If someone's listening in the audience at another day, they can understand that summary and understand the alternatives that are before the applicant and you. Thank you.
Okay, so with that said, do we have a motion to accept staff's recommendation?
Yeah, I'm sorry, the staff's recommendation to
Is
deny.
to deny mod 4.
And the alternative is to come back next time
That's not,
with changes, no.
that's not in the staff report. Staff report would be to deny it. Correct,
Okay,
Brian?
I guess.
There also is an option to direct us to come back with something else. So you could make denial come back with 1, 2, 3.
You're coming back with something else, or you're gonna request of the applicant to provide more information?
Yeah, it depends on what you're requesting.
Okay.
If you're requesting something, please be specific, because it helps the applicant and it helps city staff. So if you're looking for something really specific to address the asphalt parking lot and the 10 acres of parking of RVs,
Yes.
and you have something on your mind, you can offer some ideas if you have it. If you don't have any, leave it to the applicant and staff, and we'll try to come up with something to address for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I brought it up before that I think the landscaping needs to be addressed, like, and taken into account a lot closer. Right now, the footprint of Building A is just noted as deer grass at this point, and I don't think that's appropriate, as, like, the first thing you see is just a big deer grass covered, pad. And then again, like, I want to see a drawing to scale of the plant materials with the buildings and all of the RVs and fencing shown from across the street. And then I would like to see a transverse section through the site as well. Because I want to understand, I mean, I can tell from the grading that the buildings are higher than the street, but I'm not clear on how tall these RVs are compared to everything else and how visible they are.
So I'm sorry to keep sorry, Chair, if I keep asking these questions, but I'm trying to prevent continuations of the future meetings and so forth. So to address the asphalt parking lot, you're looking for a cross-section through Highway 126 and through the site, and how they address aesthetically to draw your attention away from the asphalt parking. And those kinds of renderings that you just described would assist you, right?
Yes.
Okay. I got it. Thank you.
Okay, so you're making that a motion?
Yeah, I make that a motion.
Okay, do you want to, Michael, do you want to repeat what you think she said?
So I think just for the record, would you be able to, if you recall off the top of your head, list the specific items? And the way that I think you're structuring this is on page 8 of the staff report, providing further comments and directions.
Here, I took the notes of what she was saying, right? Ashley, if Commissioner Connolly, if I can repeat. You're looking for renderings to illustrate that this project will define the city's character through either landscaping or architecture, and you like to see drawings that do that. And you want to really punctuate it in those areas because of the concern with parking. And I didn't hear any real grave concern with reduction of retail. You still want to see retail there, but if we can do these particular items to reduce the impact of asphalt, you want to see that.
Well, and the retail.
And you want to put retail in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
the
That's
retail
why I'm asking. I didn't want to put
is
too
a
many words in
complete
your mouth.
deal breaker for me if there's no
Okay.
retail. But I would want to see that there's more of an effort made to, I mean, it shouldn't just be a parking lot. That's not an accepted use. And I don't think it's appropriate for the archway to the, or, gateway to the city either.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, we don't have a second, so that motion fails. So do we have another motion? Can we just make a motion to approve the mod 4? Okay,
If I, just as a legal caveat, I would not recommend doing that because of, if there's an approval, it's not picking up modifications to the conditions that might need to be made. A resolution for approval would need to be brought back with the findings supporting the planning commission's rationale. So it's ultimately the planning commission's decision, but because of for the future of staff having to deal with my strong recommendation would be providing that direction to staff. Come back with items reflecting approval, including a resolution and conditions of approval that reflect that.
okay, so does that need to be voted on to do that?
That would be, the motion would be to continue the item to the next planning commission meeting with a resolution reflecting approval and updated conditions of approval reflecting approval of modification number 4.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I don't know if I follow this, but so if we make a motion to adopt denial of mod 4 and it's a 2-2 vote, then the applicant could either proceed with modification 3 that's been approved or appeal to city council.
Correct. If the motion were to accept the staff recommendation, and I think I'm just repeating what you said here, if the motion were to accept the staff recommendation denying modification number 4, that's either, and that motion were approved, that either leaves the project as it is currently approved or allows the applicant the opportunity to appeal that denial of the planning commission to the city council.
I think just in discussion, I don't think we have a majority vote either way, so I'm gonna motion to adopt resolution 25-1053, attachment C, denying modification number 4 to development permit 18-02, conditional use permit 18-02, and lot merger 18-02, authorizing the plan director to approve changes related to the retaining wall.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on that? Okay, let's have a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay, I vote no.
Opposed, no.
Opposed, no. So it doesn't go anywhere. So now, the applicant has the option to go to city council. Is that correct?
As of now, if the planning commission ends up deadlocked,
Which we are right now.
then effectively, you've had, well, I don't know if we've had an approval mode, presumably it would end in 2-2, then the, and maybe it would be good for the record to do that.
To approval?
To reflect the approval scenario, just so there's a record on the vote, but what would end up happening is there'd be no planning commission action taken, and that would be effectively a denial of the project.
Well, we're not sure what that might go, I mean, that might pass, we don't know that, so.
Correct.
So can I entertain a motion to approve mod 4 with staff to come back with the conditions?
So the motion would be to direct staff to come back with a resolution approving modification number 4 and updated conditions reflecting approval of modification number 4 at the next planning commission meeting.
Okay, do I have a motion on that?
Can I ask a question? So when, I'm sorry. When you're saying the staff has to come back with conditions for approval, does that mean that they can impose new conditions? Then, like, what does that mean?
It depends on what the motion that I just described would be reflecting what the applicant request is for modification number 4. So that's effectively just making things within the conditions as they exist now consistent with what the modification number 4 proposed. So that might be things like updating square footage, changing the building names, things like parking calculations that might not be reflected exactly in the existing condition, but it wouldn't be adding new that's not part of their proposal.
Okay.
So what that motion would basically be saying, we're accepting, that we want to adopt modification number 4, bring that back. That resolution is not in the planning commission packet right now to
Okay.
adopt, so it'd be bringing back that at the next meeting.
Something else to review. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, so Michael's, you want to just restate the approval of mod 4, what that is, then we can.
Okay, so the approval scenario would be, the motion would be to approve, to direct staff to prepare a resolution reflecting approval of modification number 4 and bring back updated conditions of approval.
To match the
To match the
mod 4.
modification number 4 approval at the next planning commission meeting.
And
the next regular.
Do you have to rescind the previous motion that was a 2-2 vote that failed?
That motion's done, that failed.
That's done, yeah.
That motion's done.
Okay, so do I have a motion for approval of mod 4?
As
As Michael described it.
Just a question before I make the motion. If that fails or 2-2, and that's then a failed motion as well.
Yep.
Where do we go from there? Does it go back to just the applicant could appeal and mod 3 is?
That's correct.
Okay.
A third alternative, which I don't think the applicant would want, and I've not heard the planning commission, would be to wait for the other when there's a 5th planning commission.
No, because you
member.
can't, you don't know, maybe somebody else will be sick next month, so.
Right.
So
I motion, I'll make a motion to direct staff to bring back approval to modification number 4.
A resolution.
Resolution for modification number 4.
with the updated conditions.
With the updated conditions.
Reflecting approval.
Reflecting
correct.
approval.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, so that does not, that dies.
Okay. So that effectively concludes the item then, unless the planning commission wanted to entertain waiting for the 5th commissioner. If the planning commission's not gonna entertain that option, then it's effectively a denial of mod number 4, which the applicant can appeal, or
So the applicant, if he appeals, which I'm sure he will, to city council, what's the time period of getting a on the city council agenda?
I don't know offhand. There's, I believe that's, and the applicant should check on that. I believe it's a 15-day appeal period. So there is a time window. And then I don't recall the municipal code requirement. It's possible there's a specified time period in there.
There's a
but I'm not
specified
sure.
time period. I can't remember if it's 10 days or 15 days. We'll need to look at that. We'll have an answer tomorrow. And then that will have to be a public hearing. So the public hearing, the public hearing turns out to be approximately about 21 days because the newspaper is only published once a week.
Okay, but it'd be faster for the applicant to appeal to the city council rather than come back to us if with 5 commissioners, correct?
Most
Probably.
likely.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, well, I think that concludes the item. And the last thing is, does any planning commissioners have any comments? None? Kevin, do you have anything on that?
I do. I want to welcome the new commissioners. Your first night. Welcome. The previous commissioners didn't have that for like 10 years.
Now you know why they resigned.
This is my chance to give you a little update on some projects, and then you can ask me some questions if I'm missing updates on projects. There's a project in North Fillmore that's 30 acres with an approved project where they have approved clearing and grubbing, and they started that work. It's called Creekside by Williams Homes, and they are clearing and grubbing and some grading. It's 135 units, Brian? How big is the project?
134.
134 with some ADUs.
With ADUs.
To address affordability. And then the Bridges subdivision, you know it as Bridges subdivision, that's the common name. The official name is called the Heritage Valley Park Specific Plan. In about 18 months, that project will be complete. The project still needs to do a bike path. The construction plans are approved, another mile of a bike path. Includes an 8.8 acre park and a welcome to Fillmore area. Right at Trestle Way. It's very nicely designed. Planning Commission and City Council already approved the design. We're in plan check number 3. Sonic, everyone's looking at Sonic. When's the city gonna approve it? When's the city gonna approve it? Well, we've approved it a long time ago, right? It's in the hands of the contractor. So the city's not delaying anything. The contractor is trying to get it done, and it's a painfully slow project, and it will be for the life of the project. Nova Storage has a temporary certificate of occupancy. It's a storage project off of A Street and 2nd Street, or is that First Street? First Street. Did you have something that you wanted to update, Brian? Okay, I don't have anything else.
One question on the Bridges, the park. Do we get to see that before it's approved? The new park they're putting in? Because I remember you sent us preliminary stuff on it.
Can I double check that? Because that's a new wrinkle. We were not going to bring that before you, nor before the city council. We were just going to do plan checking and make sure it's consistent with the specific plan. I need to check to see. I can't remember what we did for Rio Vista Park if we brought it before the city council and the planning commission. Conceptually, if you follow the specific plan, there's no need to come before the planning commission. Look, can I get back with you on that?
Sure. There's just a couple. When we got that, there was a couple of things on there that had questions.
Okay. Well, you can email me the questions.
Okay.
Or if you have a question right now, I can try to answer them.
Well, the one thing was talking about having metal animal features in there or something. I think there was statues or something.
We had only 64 comments on the rendering that was submitted.
Oh.
So we asked for things like boulders, statues, all kinds of things we've asked for.
Right, but the one question I had is, why when Fillmore would we put in metal statues when it's 105 degrees out?
'Cause
That
they
kids
look
can climb
great.
on and touch.
They don't have to touch them.
They don't have to, but that could be a concern from legally wise, we put up something that could be dangerous to kids touching.
Yeah, we haven't looked at any of those details. We just talked about statues, right? So if we put statues in there representative of animals around here, we were thinking of condors, bears, mountain lions, raccoons, and things that are typical there, because we're supposed to be heritage park and all
Right.
that kind of stuff. And we're close to the river. We're trying to have representative type of animals. That's fun for kids, and they learn a little bit about animals.
Yeah, I would just, because I think it called out for metal, and I was very concerned about that.
We haven't looked at any that great
Okay.
detail, not yet. We're close.
Okay.
But I'll find out, see if we bring that before you.
Okay.
I have a question on Sonic. How long was the original schedule for that build? When it was approved?
We had anticipated all the public improvements would have been done within a year at most, and that was the agreement. But they've had an extension. So I think most of their delay has been in connecting sewer and water crossing Highway 126.
So their overall schedule from start to end of construction?
It's pushed at least a year at this point.
But he's asking for
I'm just asking
what was the
duration?
construction schedule that they anticipated when we issued a building permit? How
Was it
long did
18
they
months?
think it would take?
18 months to an 18-month build?
It was something like that, yeah.
And then it's probably now 30.
It's doubled, close.
32?
Yeah. That's about
The
right.
planning commission approved the project in 2018.
I think we issued the building permit at least a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Oh, maybe longer.
Maybe 22, 21?
Is there another jurisdiction that governs closing the highway to bring the sewer and what is the infrastructure you just said they're having
Oh.
trouble doing?
The biggest hangup that they're having at the moment, which has been the case, is making the sewer connection to meet the plumbing in the building, and the sewer connection's in Orange Grove. And then the second utility is the water. So the potable water has to come across Highway 126. You see the steel plates out there now?
Mm-hmm.
Those have been in there longer than you want them to.
Okay.
It's because they're still working on their jack and bore under the highway. They actually had their Caltrans encroachment permit expire, and they've been locked up in getting a time extension on the Caltrans encroachment permit to do that work. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So that's what's delaying it.
Those are the two big things right now. And then once they get the water connection, they'll be able to put their fire hydrant in, and then they can drop lumber. We're hoping that as soon as that fire hydrant goes in, this thing just takes off and gets built.
It won't.
But here's,
You're sending false hope.
yeah.
We approved the project in
We're optimists.
2017 or 2018. Building permits were ready 2 to 3 years ago.
And
To
it's all the
project-
city,
To
it's all the
project that
city's
they're
fault.
gonna
Brian.
advance it
Okay.
once something happens is not realistic.
No.
Here's the silver lining is that they're getting their public improvements done. They're front loading the public improvements. So it's not as though we've had some projects here that get their building built and they come and ask for certificate of occupancy, and lo and behold, they don't have their sidewalks done or their light posts in or their
Curbs.
acceptance from the city on their streets, curbs, sidewalks. And they're held up at occupancy because they went gangbusters on the building and forgot about their public
And
improvements.
just to clarify for
Yeah.
the public listening.
But it's a slow haul for this part.
The delays or the impacts are nothing to do with city approval or staff
No,
approval.
there's
or-
nothing they're waiting on
Nothing.
for us.
Yeah,
They're-
all the impacts have been caused that are construction related, strictly
Right.
construction related.
Correct.
Okay.
Or lack of construction.
And this might be a question for Public Works, but have they paid all of their connection fees and
Yes.
signed off from all of that?
No, they paid for, until the law just changed in January. They paid all connection fees and they paid all development impact fees, building permit fees, all fees have been paid.
Okay.
All right, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. The Planning Commission adjourns to the Planning Commission regular meeting scheduled for March 19th, 2025 at 6:30 PM in City Council Chambers, 250 Central Avenue, Fillmore, California.